Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gamers of all ages, welcome back to YouTube. My name is C-Raptor, and today we're going to talk about, well, something a little touchy, let's say. Carbonite is a problem, isn't it, right? Like, the Carbonite boosters for Star Wars Unlimited have become an issue. There were players in the world that kind of foresaw some of this, and we'll talk about that later. I'm going to highlight a few videos you might want to go back and watch from nearly a year ago now. But I think it's undeniable at this state that Carbonite has caused a lot of issues with the game. And I'm not talking about the game itself, like the gameplay. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the long-term viability of Star Wars Unlimited in the sense of, does your local store stock it? Does their distributor have it available? Are they able to make money off of it, right? These are really important questions, and I think Carbonite has kind of impacted them all negatively. So we're going to talk through some things here. Let me give you a quick update, a quick recap, a quick look ahead of where we're going. So I kind of started on this slide a minute ago. But we're going to talk about what I perceive as the actual problem here. Quick recap of the announced changes. In other words, what has FFG said they're already doing? Maybe to help this problem, maybe not, but I think it's going to help. We're going to talk about the basis for analysis. What I'm going to be doing is trying to rough out kind of, some dime store analysis on the print run sizes of Carbonite boxes for each of these sets and why that's important. And we'll talk a little more about that in a minute. We'll do that for each set. We'll take a quick look at, okay, this is what we think, where we landed, and so on. And we're going to take a look at where we think we're going to go in the future. And again, a lot of that is going to be assumption. I might be able to remake this one later on once we see the final number of prestige cards for Lawless Time. But for now, we're going to be just taking a spitball assumption and running from there. And then at the very end, the big question on everybody's minds is any of this going to help? I believe it is, but I want your opinion. I've been playing CCGs a long time, but I have never owned or operated a shop. I've never run a retail point. I want to know if the guys out there that do that think this matters, right? Come into the comments. Let's have a conversation. I want to know. All right, so what's the actual problem here? At the end of the day, Carbonite boosters have driven the overall value of the game down. When I say game value, I'm not necessarily talking about singles prices. I am and I'm not, right? Singles prices for most retailers are not really that relevant, right? Most retailers don't sell singles of Star Wars Unlimited. The game is not large enough. This isn't Magic or Pokemon, okay? So singles prices are relevant to the conversation, but they're not what's driving the real problem, in my opinion. Carbonite boosters and their existence has kind of driven down demand for regular boosters as well, and that's overall kind of been a mess, right? So there's a lot of things playing into this, okay? For one, the hit rate for showcases in Carbonite packs is too high, right? If I'm going to showcase chase, I'm going to go buy Carbonite. I'm not going to buy regular booster packs. I'm just not. Like, the hit rate is so much better. I can almost always get one in a case. Now, that's still an expensive card, and whether or not it's a valuable card is of some dubious question. But if I'm really, really caring about it, then that's what I'm going to do. That helps drive regular boxes down in value. It also depresses the value of regular boxes because, again, a lot of the legendaries that I might want out of regular boxes, I might be able to open a Carbonite pack that has 3 or 4 of them in there, right? When I open a regular booster, I have a chance at 1 legendary and a very, very small chance at 2. Okay, in other words, occasionally I'm going to get one in my regular rare slot, and then I might have one in the foil or possibly the hyperspace slot just in front of that rare slot. So there's a possibility of getting double legendary pack. But when you open a Carbonite pack, it's not that uncommon, is it? Right? You're going to maybe you get a regular foil one, maybe you get one in the hyperspace slot. Your prestige card might be legendary. So overall, just having Carbonite out there drives the price of the game down in terms of having the amount of money that retailers are available to recoup. And we've reached a point where Carbonite boxes sell below what retailers pay for them. My buddy Trey recently used a phrase. He said, this game is dangerously cheap. And I think that's That's a problem. Now, FFG, I think, is realizing this, but that's why we're having this conversation, okay? Um, Prestige variants also kind of help drive this in the wrong direction in my mind, right? There's the prestige cards get treatments when you open a Carbonite pack. I could get a prestige legendary. I could get that fancy chase legendary Vader out of set 5 that I'm looking for, or Anakin, or whatever, along with a foil version or a hyperspace one or whatever. When I do that, I don't need to go buy regular booster packs. But I also think, for my money, for me, this is my analysis. More than anything, what's really hurt all of this. The Carbonite print runs are too large. I have a lot of TCG experience, but Carbonites are my first experience with collector's boxes. Okay, and so for me, coming into this, my expectation was that the Carbonite print run would be small enough that, back in JTL, right, when I was new to all this, that the print run would be small enough that it'd be like, okay, for the first, I'm going to say 2 to 3 weeks the set is out, Carbonite will be available. And then after that, product availability is going to dry up like a prune, and it's going to be hard to find. It's going to be rare at that point. That really hasn't played out. A little bit for JTL, and we'll talk about why in a minute. But for the other two sets, right, for Legends of the Force and Secrets of Power, Carbonite is everywhere. In fact, a lot of places are trying to dump it off cheaply just to try to get something back for it. This is not good. What is FFG doing to try and, in my mind, trying to help alleviate this issue? Well, for starters, they're changing the contents of Carbonite packs. That's not really relevant to the conversation that I want to have here with a little bit. But I do think it will become relevant in a different way later on, and we'll talk about that as to why I think the announced changes are going to help. The single biggest change that's going to help alleviate what I perceive as the real problem here is we're no longer going to have 250 numbered serialized versions of every single prestige card. Okay? What they've said is that different subsets of these prestige cards are going to be printed in smaller runs. Okay? They've specifically called out 250, 100, and 50. Popular thinking, most of us believe, is that that's going to correspond to uncommons will be, X out of 250, rares will be done at 100, and legendaries will be done in 50. That's a big deal, right? In my opinion, that's a big deal. And the math is going to show you why in a couple more slides, in my opinion. So, as we go forward to try and wrap our brains around what this all means for the print run of Carbonite, what do we know? Well, we know how many serialized cards are printed, right? This is simple math. I know that go back to JTL, right? I know there are 36 prestige cards in JTL. I know there's 250 of each. Bam. There are 9,000 serialized cards that they have to distribute. Simple, easy. So we know exactly how many serialized cards are printed. But we don't know their hit rate, right? If you go look, they'll tell you the hit rate of legendaries and boosters and hyperspace cards and boosters, but they have never said anywhere what the hit rate for serialized cards is supposed to be, or is, right? They know it, but it's never been made public. So any number that we assume is just picking a number out of thin air. But the good news is that for the analysis we're doing, as long as we use the same number for every set, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to be looking at this in terms of percentages, right? And so the percentages aren't going to change, right? Whether the actual hit rate is 1 serial in every 5 boxes or 1 serial in every 8 boxes, the percentages won't change as long as I use the same hit rate for everything. But that's one thing, right? We don't actually know if the hit rate has changed. If the hit rate has changed between sets, then a lot of this might be just speculative. But we're going to continue anyway. So the assumption I'm going to make is that the hit rate of serialized cards in Carbonite boxes is 1 serial for every 8 boxes, right? We know it's higher than 4. You're not guaranteed a serialized card in every case. And it seems like as soon as you start to open that second case, most of the folks that I have spoken with, and we got some local players that have opened a lot of Carbonite, you'll usually find a serialized card in that second case. So we're just going to rough it out and say 1 to 8, okay? That's what we're doing. So if you go back to JTL, right, this is where it all began. JTL gave us 36 prestige cards, 250 of each, 9,000 total serialized cards, right? We had 13 uncommon, 9 rare, 10 legendary, and 4 special. Now I'm putting the rarities out here because I think this is relevant. I want folks I bet a lot of folks have never really thought about this, but I want everybody to see where the breakpoints are in terms of how many legendaries out of the print run, right? I think that's interesting. So here, 10 out of 36 legendaries. So assuming our 1-to-8 ratio from earlier, we end up with 72,000 boxes of Carbonite. Now, I want to take a step back real quick, and I'm going to link a video down below. There was a gentleman on YouTube who has done some analysis like this that kind of planted the seed in my mind to do this. A guy named IOpenTCGs. He's done several videos on this, but way back before Carbonites ever actually hit the shelves, he did some analysis of this sort of thing. And so I want you guys, if you're interested, go back and check that out and have a look at what his math was and his thought processes and why. He actually, in my mind, is one of the first people that kind of started sounding the alarm on this, because way back before JTL ever released, he started highlighting that, hey guys, you're really putting a lot more showcases in the environment. You're really devaluing showcases. This feels terrible. Now all these sets later, that's changing, but we'll get to that in a minute. So this is our baseline for comparison. All right. So Legends of the Force, the second set where serialized cards came out. This is where, in my mind, the whole thing goes off the rails. Just this quickly, okay? If you think back to JTL, right? And even today, I don't think it's that easy to find JTL Carbonite. Can you find it? Yes, but you got to look. I can walk into my regular retail shop 20 minutes away, and they've still got Carbonite Legends of the Force on the shelf because it's just not that hard to get, right? Because we went to 46 prestige cards. So you added 10 more prestige cards at 250 copies of each. That drives the size of the entire print run that much larger. Almost 25% more prestiges. We went from 9,000 in circulation to 11,500. 12,000 would have been 25% higher. So we're at 21% higher or something. Again, the balance here matters. 20 uncommon, 11 rare, 13 legendary, and 2 special. Nearly half of the 46 prestige cards in Legends of the Force are uncommon. That feels terrible. That feels terrible. To buy a $25 pack and open an uncommon prestige card feels awful. Now, I'm not sure this is going to change necessarily in terms of how we balance things out going forward. But I know that this was a big reason why I didn't buy a lot of Legends of the Force. I didn't want to spend that much money to go get an uncommon card. I was like, nah, it's fine. Also, in my opinion, Legends of the Force suffered from subpar artwork on a lot of the prestige cards. So you had a lot of factors going together to, in my opinion, you printed way more of this than you needed for the set, and then demand was lower as well, right? The JTL prestige cards looked amazing. The artwork, the ships looked so good. And then for Legends of the Force, we got 27 of the 46 are on this, or is it 27? Yeah, it's a lot. Are on this kind of generic background, not amazing. It's they don't look that great. They're okay, So if we go back and we assume our 1-to-8 ratio, we have 92,000 boxes of Carbonite. That's 28% more that was printed for JTL. So higher supply, lower demand, prices go down. Dirt simple math, right? Very, very easy. Now it brings us to Secrets of Power. Now, things got slightly better. We only printed 43 prestige cards in this set, so that means that our print run gets a little smaller, 10,750 serialized prestige cards to distribute. 15 uncommon, 18 rare, 9 legendary, and 1 special. So we went from 10 out of 36 legendaries in JTL, about a little less than a third, right? Then we had, I think it was 13 out of 46, and now we're at 9 out of 43? This proportion is just all out of crazy, in my opinion. Again, are they going to change this? We don't know. But man, this feels weird. So again, if we assume our 1-to-8 ratio, 86,000 boxes of Carbonite printed here. Again, that's still almost 20% more than was printed for JTL, but is at least a little less than was printed for Legends of the Force. So now let's talk about Lawless Time. We know they're going to be changing the how prestiges are printed in terms of some are going to be 250, some are going to be 100, some are going to be 50. But we don't know what the quantity of those cards is. I'm going to continue to look at JTL Carbonite as the way it should be done, right? And I'm saying that because in my mind, that feels closest to the vision that I had of what I expected a collector's box market to look like. And presumably what FFG looked like, thought as well. So we're going to just assume for a minute, we're going to assume 35 prestige cards, right? I have to pick a number out of thin air. That's the number I'm picking, okay? We don't know this number yet. We will know this number before the set goes to print. So at some point, I'll come back and update this slide, and we'll do another little video in the future. But for now, we're just going to take a wild guess at 35 cards. I'm going to say 20 uncommon, 10 rare, and 5 legendaries. Kind of like we were saying earlier. Now, I'll be honest, this is probably not correct. If you really look at it, we should probably be looking at more like a maybe, I don't know, like in, I don't know, I would have said 15, 13, 8. I don't know, something like this, right? Like we got to look at it. But for the purposes of this discussion, I'm just trying to point out this is why the quantity change matters, okay? Because in the end, I now only have 6,250 prestige cards that I have to distribute. Well, that's a much smaller print run. Only 50,000 boxes if we assume the hit rate has stayed static the entire time. That's significantly smaller. That's 31% less than they printed for JTL. That's almost half of what got printed for Legends of the Force, and still 40% less than what got printed for Secrets of Power. I think this change right here, the monkeying around with the number of serialized cards we're printing, is the single best change that they announced to Carbonite packs, because I believe that eventually it's going to make a difference. So then, of course, the million-dollar question, will this all actually help? Well, for my money, right, the pack changes that they announced earlier is going to help. I say sustain demand. I probably should have said bolster demand, right? I feel like it's going to buoy demand for these a little bit, right? The standard foils have never been very popular. The additional hyper foils, however, that's going to attract a lot of attention. So now a pack of Carbonite will no longer have regular foils in. It'll basically be like half hyperspace, half hyper foil with a prestige card in the middle. I think that's a better change for people that are buying them for that purpose. So I think that's going to help kind of buoy demand a little bit. That's helpful. The reduction in hit rate for showcases, I think, is going to have the opposite effect. I think some people are going to turn away from them and be like, well, but the showcase drop rate is so much lower than it used to be. Am I really going to buy these things? Like, I don't know. Is this going to balance out? Again, it's too early to say. For my money, the prestige cards are now going to be the real driver of sales here, right? Because the art treatments, I mean, we mentioned it earlier with Secrets of the Force. The art treatments have been very hit or miss, right? Like the propaganda art cards out of Secrets of Power are chef's kiss. Those look amazing. The JTL ships look amazing. The wanted posters out of Secrets of Power are pretty good. For my money, there are very few of the legendaries of the prestiges, in Legends of the Force that look all that amazing. Some of the triptych art pieces they did are pretty cool, but like in general, I was not a big fan of that art. I did not buy very many Carbonite packs of Legends of the Force, right? So in my mind, the prestige cards is really what's going to drive this here. But the reduction in the number of serialized overall should drive smaller print runs. We don't know how small, right? All the numbers I'm using are literally made up for the purposes of analysis, because it's all we have, right? Without knowing the actual hit rate, it's all we can guess. But I think at least the math is able to demonstrate that by monkeying around with the number of serialized cards that get printed, right, we're going to lower the print size. We're going to lower the print run of Carbonite for Lawless Time. And that needs to happen. Carbonite print runs, Carbonite boxes, Carbonite packs need to be available when a set releases. As they hit the shelves, there should be a big frenzy, and then they should be very difficult to find. In my opinion, that's the way this works best. After a few weeks, supply of those should kind of dry up more or less, and then they should be difficult to find. Finding them should be like, oh, cool, look at that, you've still got some, right? If it's not that way, then your print run is too large, in my opinion. I think this is going to help. I genuinely do believe that we're talking about a print run that could be half of what it was for JTL. I mean, it's probably going to be at least a third. Could be even smaller. We don't really know. Like, they could come in and say, we're only going to prestige 25 cards. Whole thing gets even smaller. That's what drives the whole thing, right? How many cards are getting the prestige treatment, and then how are you distributing that in terms of how many are getting 250, how many are getting 100, how many are getting 50. We'll do some time store analysis once we have that number, but this is a problem that FFG's got to solve, right? There's too much data now that demonstrates the existing Carbonite print runs, the existing Carbonite booster system is not working. It's detrimental to the game. Changes are coming. I think they're going to help. Fingers crossed that everyone else will agree with me and that they actually will help, right? So we'll see. What do you guys think? Am I crazy? Am I talking out of my head? Come into the comments. Let me know. Let's have a conversation. I always love y'all's thoughts, okay? In the meantime, I'm going to have some more stuff coming to the channel here soon. We're going to be talking about doing some prep work for Sealed Deck here on Secrets of Power. Look for that later in the week and going forward over the holidays. In the meantime, guys, y'all take care. Peace. I'll see you later.